He is a man of God by day, and he's the child of Satan by night. And he literally is the son of the devil. Satan himself sired him. And his birthday, guess what? His birthday is on February 2nd, the 33rd day of the year. Now, can anybody think of a holiday that we have? Groundhog Day. Think of a movie. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. April 20th is the 110th day of the year. What took place on that day? May 1st, 121st day of the year, which is 11 times 11. December the 7th, the 341st day of the year, which is 11 times 31. What happened on December the 7th? Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. And December the 6th, our country, the United States of America, was not going to get involved in the war with Germany and over in Europe. And we're not going to get involved with what Japan was doing. On December the 7th, as Roosevelt said, a day that will live in infamy, now our country is at war. That's interesting, isn't it? And it took place on a date divisible by the number 11. Let's look at this May 1st date, the 121st day of the year. You know what I found out from the Da Vinci Code? That this secret society called the Priory of Zion, that some say doesn't exist. I believe that it does. Because there are patterns involved here. Patterns that I know about. And the Priory of Zion has as its members exactly 121 members. 11 times 11. And on May 1st, 1776, and that date is stamped on the back of every dollar bill that this country puts out, a Jesuit priest, and there is a Vatican connection to all of this. Do not be deceived by what's coming out of Rome. A Jesuit priest by the name of Adam Weishaupt formed a secret society called, and he officially called it, the Illuminati. The Illuminati, the illuminated ones. And they had an agenda. And their agenda was to infiltrate secret societies such as Masonry, governments, governmental agencies, they were called the Order of the Perfectibilists, which is a term that basically says we are wanting to bring about the new age of mankind, where mankind has reached his next level of evolution, and now he is a perfected being. And that has to do with the secret of Freemasonry. And on this date, why did he pick this date? Because of the numerical significance of it. May 1st, 121st day of the year, 11 times 11. I want you to notice this graphic here. It is a representation of the Tower of Babel. This is what most people believe that it probably looked like. But I say to you that this symbol has an even more interesting meaning, and you'll find that out in our video on the secret of Freemasonry. See, God's been showing me this stuff over the years. I can't give it all out now. I have to give it in several videos. But this is the Tower of Babel. I want you to notice that when the European Union was formed, they put out a little brochure, a little poster. I want you to notice that it says there on the bottom, Europe, many tongues, one voice. Isn't that interesting? That's exactly what took place in Genesis chapter 11. And you notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, not stars, pentagrams, the 5-point plan, 11 stars here circling this Tower of Babel, Europe, many tongues, one voice. It is an attempt to rebuild the Tower of Babel, but it's not going to be some brick and mortar tower that's being built on planet Earth. Something far more diabolical than that. And the birth of the EU takes place like this. 1914 was World War I. And what were these world wars about? Albert Pike says that these world wars, and he predicted these things like he was planning them, or like the secret societies were planning them, that there were going to be 2 world wars that were basically going to weaken the power that kings or monarchs had over the European nations. And that's exactly what happened. World War I, 1914, that's a multiple of 11. 33 years later, in 1947, that's when Israel was given their right to statehood. a thing called the Marshall Plan went into effect. That was the United States plan to rebuild Europe after the Second World War, 33 years after the First World War. 1958, exactly 11 years later, the EU is officially formed and a common currency is planned. And 2002, exactly 44 years later, the euro becomes currency in all European nations. Are you seeing a pattern here that's taking place right in front of our very eyes? They use numbers, they use symbols, they use them to a fault. That's how you can recognize what goes on. They decided that this European Union needed a sort of like a Congress building. This is where their representatives meet. It was designed to look exactly like, and you see there the design model of it, and you see the finished product. You see a sun disk there and a sort of like a capstone pyramid image, and you see the unfinished Tower of Babel there. That is where the European Parliament meets. And they have exactly 666 chairs there. 665 of them in their meeting room are filled by representatives. There's one empty chair there. Genesis chapter 11 verse 4, remember what they said? And they said, "Go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach into heaven." Very interesting, because in 1958, NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was formed by an act of Congress. And exactly 11 years later, let's see, that would be 1969. Does anybody remember where you were in 1969? I was 3 years old, so I don't remember a whole lot. 1969, exactly 11 years later, take a look at it. Apollo, what number? 11. And it did what? Landed on the moon. Some say it didn't. You're welcome to your opinion. I think they did. I think they did because what is not known by a lot of people is that the two men, and there were 3 in that capsule, but 2 men actually landed on the moon. Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. And did you know that both of those guys were 33-degree Scottish Rite Masons? And about 33 minutes after they landed on the moon, they performed, and this is knowable knowledge, anybody can find this out, they performed a Masonic communion service on the surface of the moon. Why did they do that? Very interesting. But notice that it's Apollo 11. Notice the logo for Apollo 11. We have an eagle with a branch. And when you see a bird flying around with a branch, what is it going to do? It's building a nest, isn't it? Now I want you to remember that, because toward the end here we're going to see that that is exactly what the Bible said that they were going to do. It's very, very interesting. And you remember when those 2 guys landed on the moon, there was a phone call. It's the longest distance phone call ever take place between the president, Richard Nixon, and these 2 men. And here is what Nixon said concerning their landing. He said, "Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world." Wow! That is at the core of the secret of Freemasonry. Heavens becoming a part of man's world. In fact, if I could just illustrate this for you very quickly, the symbol of the square and compass, this is what Albert Pike said. The compass represents the heaven principle, and the square represents the earth principle, and they're joined together. Think about it. As you talk to us, Nixon goes on to say, from the Sea of Tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to the earth. That sounds like peace and safety, doesn't it, you? What else happened? 1969. There was an album released in the 70s, a song by the Eagles called Hotel California. Remember that song? You've listened to that song, haven't you? Sure you have. And the words go like this: "And I asked the lady, please bring me my wine." Wine is a symbol of the Spirit. And she said, "We haven't had that Spirit here since when?" 1969. Very interesting. 1969 is when Anton Sandor LaVey published his Satanic Bible. That's when it first came out. And LaVey was head of the First Church of Satan, get this, in San Francisco on California Street. And the Eagles, in their song, Hotel California, were singing a song about the Church of Satan on California Street called Hotel California. Now I'm going to throw this in, and you'll get another video when we talk about this on our video about Yea Hath God Said, the Bible translation issue. Which Bible should I use? That right now, the Satanic Bible is currently in print. And it's produced and it's printed by a company called HarperCollins. HarperCollins is owned by Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch also owns Zondervan Publishing Company, which publishes the NIV. And I'm going to give you a verse out of the Bible. The Bible says that a tree, a corrupt tree, cannot produce good fruit. And I'm saying to you that any corporation or anything that has anything to do with the Satanic Bible, and one man who prints the Satanic Bible in one hand and the NIV Bible in the other, something's up. Something's up. How many of you remember this song, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius? And that song was released in 1969. They were heralding the events taking place then. And the Aquarius is designated as number 11 out of the 12 zodiac signs. Very, very interesting. 11 years later, from 1969, 1980, Marilyn Ferguson releases The Aquarian Conspiracy, telling everybody what the New Age has planned. By the way, I've read about half of that book. I'm just kind of going through it piece by piece. And something that I've noticed already in the language that Marilyn Ferguson uses to show, and she is a New Ager, to show what is going on in the New Age movement, the language that she's using is the language that I hear coming out of the emerging church, the Rick Warren purpose-driven movement, on and on and on. Community building, new paradigm shift, reformation. They're using the same language, folks. You can believe that or not. You can be mad at me for saying that or not. I don't care. It's the truth. Notice the symbol there. Notice the symbol. It's called the triquetra. There's a tarot card called the Hierophant. The Hierophant. We deal with that symbol. And he's holding a triquetra in one hand, and he's making the sign of 3 in the other hand. And I know what that means, and we'll talk about that in another video. He has a pentagram on his chest, and on and on. There's a lot of symbols here. But the Hierophant basically is in charge of bringing people to the New World Order, initiating them. And he holds in his hand the key to transformation. So why did that symbol show up in 1980 on the New King James Version of the Bible? We answer that question in one of our other videos. It was in 1991, 11 years later, that George Bush said,
"What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order."
It is a big idea, a new world order. Exactly 11 years later. Now let's deal with the Twin Towers. I want you to notice that steel construction began on the World Trade Center in 1968. 2001 they were brought down. How many years is that? That's 33 years. By the way, how old was Jesus when he died? 33. Think about it. Think about what's being represented here. And there's a lot that I'm not giving you that has to do with the Antichrist and the plan that's going to be followed in the life of the Antichrist. But it has everything to do with the number 33. I promise you it does. Notice this, Genesis chapter 11, verse 1. "And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech." Like the whole earth, one world. And notice the exact address of the World Trade Centers was One World Tower. Very interesting. Here you see the phrase. They said in Genesis 11, they said, "Let us build us a tower whose top may reach unto heaven." And I just remember when I first saw what I'm going to show you up on the screen. I just couldn't believe it. A brochure that was printed advertising office space in the World Trade Center. And I want you to take a look at it. Look at what it says. The closest some of us will ever get to heaven. Wow. Let us build us a tower whose top may reach into heaven.